Hello everyone, and welcome back. Imagine settling into your living room on a quiet December night. The lights dim, a warm drink in hand, and the feeling that the world is finally slowing down for a moment. Tonight, we are stepping into a version of Christmas that many people think they know, yet almost no one truly understands. The Christmas that was reinvented in the suburbs of 1,950 America. And to start this journey, let us ease ourselves in gently. Welcome back, friends. I am really glad you are here. I hope you are comfortable, relaxed, and ready for a soft and steady story about how one decade reshaped one of the most familiar holidays on Earth. So sit back, take a breath, and let us wander together through a world made of tinsel, ordered lawns, warm windows, and the quiet hum of a nation learning how to celebrate again. To appreciate how the 1,950 seconds transformed Christmas, we need to imagine what life felt like at the dawn of that decade. The Second World War had ended only a few years earlier, leaving behind a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and deep desire for stability. Families wanted normalcy. They wanted comfort. They wanted rituals that felt warm and predictable after years of uncertainty. And right at that moment, a new version of American life was emerging, the suburban dream. Rows of nearly identical houses stretched across the landscape, each one a symbol of security and a promise that the difficult years were finally giving way to something gentler. These houses were not just places to live. They were little canvases for a new kind of lifestyle, one filled with optimism, order, and a touch of shining modernity. And Christmas, perhaps more than any other holiday, became the perfect stage where all those hopes could gather. In earlier decades, Christmas in America looked quite different. It was certainly celebrated, but its imagery and rituals varied widely depending on region, culture, and family tradition. Some families focused on religious gatherings, some on homemade crafts, others on simple fireside meals. Decorations were often handmade, passed down, or improvised from natural materials. Trees were real, trimmed with popcorn strings, candles, paper ornaments, or whatever families could create together. In many homes, celebrations were small, heartfelt, and not particularly elaborate. But the 1,950 seconds shifted everything. This was the decade when Christmas became standardized, shaped, polished, packaged, and presented in a way that millions of families across the country would replicate almost exactly. It began with the houses themselves. The rapidly expanding suburbs offered a perfect physical structure for this transformation. For the first time, millions of families lived in homes that shared similar layouts, similar facades, and similar front yards. When a neighborhood has uniform architecture, it naturally encourages uniform decoration. If one family placed a string of lights across the roofline, the neighbors quickly followed, creating entire streets glowing with synchronized patterns. A single decorated lawn could inspire or gently pressure the entire block to join in. The visual rhythm of suburban housing turned Christmas decor into a kind of collective performance. It was as though the holiday had been given a new kind of stage, one with hundreds of identical sets waiting to be illuminated. Inside those homes, new technologies and new materials were quietly changing holiday traditions. The post-war industrial boom meant factories were producing more consumer goods than ever before. Plastics, aluminum, electrical components, materials that had not existed a generation earlier were now being shaped into ornaments, light strands, novelty items, and entire artificial trees. Traditional evergreen trees, with their rustic scent and falling needles, suddenly shared the spotlight with sleek metallic versions that shimmered under rotating color wheels. Their branches did not droop. Their needles did not shed. They looked futuristic, symmetrical, almost sculptural, the perfect symbol of a modern household. For many families, displaying one was not just festive. It was a proud declaration that they were part of the new, stylish America. At the same time, the rise of household appliances made holiday preparation more elaborate. Electric ovens and mixers allowed families to bake more easily, leading to the rise of Christmas cookies and home-cooked feasts as central parts of celebration. Refrigerators could store more food, meaning gatherings could grow larger. Radios and record players brought holiday music into living rooms on demand. All these innovations made the season feel more immersive and more theatrical. Suddenly, Christmas was not just an event, it became an entire atmosphere, something you could build, curate, and refine within the walls of your own home. But perhaps the most powerful engine behind this new Christmas was the rapidly expanding world of retail. Department stores, catalogs, and advertisers recognized the emotional weight of the holiday and quickly realized they could shape it. They did not simply sell decorations. They sold the idea of how Christmas should look. Window displays featured sparkling artificial snow, shimmering ornaments, and glowing lights arranged in perfect harmony. Catalogs showed smiling families gathered around beautifully decorated living rooms, with every detail neatly coordinated. Gift guides suggested what children should want, what parents should buy, and how everything should be presented. These images did not merely reflect reality, they created it. Families across the country looked at these pages and displays and asked themselves, "Is this how Christmas should be in our home too?" And slowly, the answer became yes. By the mid-1950s, the American Christmas had become a cultural template. Ornaments were shiny and colorful, often made of plastic or glass. Lights were bright and plentiful. Stockings were mass-produced with printed designs. Wrapping paper came in rolls of printed patterns, rather than simple plain sheets. The holiday changed from something improvised to something curated. Yet despite the commercialization, the heart of the holiday still retained something deeply human. Families gathered. Children waited eagerly for morning surprises. Neighbors shared cookies. Churches hosted evening services. For all the modern additions, Christmas remained a symbol of togetherness and hope. In many ways, the new decor and rituals did not replace older emotions. They simply reframed them. The most fascinating part of this transformation is how effortlessly it spread. From one neighborhood to another, from one magazine cover to the next, from television specials to catalog pages, the 1,950 seconds holiday aesthetic traveled. And because so much of it was standardized, the lights, the ornaments, the wrapping, the music, the cards, it became incredibly easy to copy. For the first time, Christmas across the entire nation looked remarkably similar. A home in California could be decorated almost identically to a home in New England. A family in the Midwest could purchase the same ornaments as a family in New York. The holiday became unified in a way it had never been before. This unity created a powerful sense of shared experience. When Americans talked about Christmas, they could picture the same kinds of scenes: a living room with a tree glowing in the corner, colorful gifts arranged neatly underneath, stockings hung in a row, and a warm supper waiting in the kitchen. Even families with different backgrounds found themselves drawn into this shared cultural rhythm. The holiday became not only a personal celebration, but a national one woven through with common images, common sounds, and common expectations. There was a quiet magic in that moment. It was not just about shiny ornaments or neat suburban lawns. It was about the country collectively choosing joy after years of hardship. It was about families finding comfort in ritual, stability in repetition, and beauty in small, manageable traditions. It was about creating a holiday that felt safe, warm, and filled with promise. And so, the 1,950 seconds did not just decorate Christmas, they rebuilt it. They transformed it from a patchwork of local customs into a coherent, widely recognized cultural event. They gave it colors, shapes, patterns, and sounds. They turned it into the holiday we recognize today. As we continue our journey through these 12 ideas, we will explore the layers of meaning behind this transformation, the excitement it generated, the pressures it introduced, and the legacy it left behind. But for now, let this image settle gently in your mind. A quiet suburban street, freshly covered in snow, each house glowing softly with warm lights, and inside each home, a family gathered around their own unique yet strangely familiar holiday scene. It all began there, in the 1,952nd suburbs, where Christmas became something bigger, brighter, and more unified than ever before. If you have ever paused in the middle of a busy holiday season and wondered, just for a moment, why everything feels so elaborate, the long shopping lists, the advertisements that seem to multiply overnight, the sense that each year has to outdo the last, then you have brushed up against a transformation that began quietly decades ago. Tonight, as we settle into this next chapter, let us gently unfold how Christmas, once a modest and family-centered celebration, evolved into one of the most commercially charged seasons of the modern world. So take a deep breath, settle into your seat or your bed, and let the soft rhythm of this story carry you along. Before the 1,950 seconds. Christmas, in many parts of America, was simple, heartfelt, and fairly modest. Families gathered in living rooms, lit by warm lamps or candles. Decorations were often handmade or passed down from older generations. A tree, if a family could afford one, was decorated with natural items, pine cones, paper chains, maybe a few gingerbread-shaped ornaments that children proudly created. Gift-giving existed, but it was often practical: a warm pair of socks, a homemade scarf, a book chosen with care. Most homes celebrated with humility, grace, and a sense of togetherness that did not require much money. But as America entered the booming prosperity of the post-war era, something began to shift. The country had new industries, new technologies, and a new appetite for goods. Factories that once produced wartime equipment were now producing toys, household appliances, electric decorations, and brightly colored products designed to bring joy and convenience into everyday life. And businesses quickly realized that Christmas, already a beloved holiday, could be the perfect stage for showcasing their new creations. In earlier eras, stores certainly sold gifts during December, but the season was short, modest, and largely centered on necessities rather than extravagance. But in the 1,950 seconds, retailers began redefining the very idea of what Christmas meant. Instead of waiting for customers to arrive with their own traditions, companies began shaping those traditions themselves. They created displays that were not just decorative, they were persuasive. Suddenly, store windows were not just windows. They became miniature fantasy worlds. Lights sparkled in synchronized patterns. Dolls moved mechanically. Artificial snow fell in slow, mesmerizing drifts. Santas waved, Trains circled tiny villages, and the whole scene was designed not just to create wonder, but to encourage purchases. And these displays worked. Families flocked to see them. Parents lifted their children so they could press their faces to the glass. The spectacle became not just a display, but a destination. People traveled from neighborhoods and even towns away to witness the magic. It became a tradition in itself, a tradition crafted not by community elders or family customs, but by the minds of department store designers and advertising teams. The line between celebration and consumption began to blur. The growing influence of media amplified this shift. The 1,950 seconds was the golden age of television, and companies took full advantage. Holiday commercials multiplied. Radios played catchy jingles that encouraged families to buy the perfect gift. Magazines filled their December issues with glossy photographs of stylish living rooms, gleaming trees, and meticulously wrapped packages. And the message was clear. Christmas was not simply something you celebrated, it was something you purchased, curated, and displayed. Families absorbed these messages almost unconsciously. Where past generations crafted their own decorations, now pre-packaged ornaments arrived in identical boxes. Where once children were happy with whatever small gift their parents could manage, now wish lists were shaped by TV ads, catalog pages, and store demonstrations. And where Christmas had once been a personal celebration defined by each household's heritage, it was now increasingly defined by store shelves and window displays. Even the idea of holiday spirit shifted subtly during this era. Joy was no longer just about gathering or gratitude. It became tied to the excitement of unwrapping something new, something modern, something chosen from the expanding world of consumer goods. Advertisements framed generosity through the lens of purchasing. Giving the right gift became proof of care. Parents were encouraged to buy more, upgrade frequently, and match the rapidly growing expectations laid out in catalog pages. One of the most powerful tools behind this change was the rise of the mail-order catalog, a thick, colorful publication filled with everything from toys to clothing to home goods. These catalogs arrived like treasure chests. Children circled their favorite items, while parents quietly calculated which wishes they could make come true. The experience was joyful, but it also subtly shifted the ritual of Christmas from the creative to the commercial. No longer did families invent their own traditions. Instead, they selected from a curated menu laid out by corporations. As catalogs and advertisements grew, so did the pressure. Christmas became a season of preparation, planning, buying, wrapping, and organizing. Families felt the need to create beautiful, coordinated displays. Gifts had to be chosen carefully, wrapped neatly, and arranged with precision. Holiday meals became grander. Homes were decorated earlier. Expectations rose quietly, but steadily. The charm of the holiday did not disappear. Far from it. Families still laughed, gathered, shared stories, and found meaning in small, tender moments. But the scale, cost, and structure of Christmas shifted. What had once been a personal tradition became something more performative, something influenced by retail cycles and corporate marketing strategies. Interestingly, this was not a malicious or cynical change. For many families, the new version of Christmas felt exciting. The lights were brighter. The gifts were more varied. The decorations were shiny and modern. Children's eyes lit up with joy at the sight of new toys. Parents genuinely wanted to create magical moments. But beneath the sparkle, a new kind of expectation was forming, one that said Christmas should look a certain way, follow a certain pattern, and meet a certain standard. And as these expectations grew, the season expanded. In the past, preparations began shortly before the holiday itself. But in the 1,950 seconds, stores began decorating earlier each year. Sales began earlier. Ads appeared earlier. The holiday season stretched outward, slowly occupying more of the calendar, until the excitement and the pressure lasted for weeks. Through all of this, Christmas evolved into a kind of shared performance. Families were not just celebrating, they were participating in a national ritual shaped by corporate imagination. The decor, the gifts, the music, the visuals, all were synchronized across the country. And while many people embraced the convenience and beauty of these changes, others quietly sensed a loss of intimacy. Something homemade had been replaced by something mass-produced. Something personal had been replaced by something expected. Yet even in this transformation, it is important to recognize that people kept the parts that mattered most. Families still gathered around tables, still shared meals, still told stories, still created memories that were meaningful and lasting. The commercial layer added complexity, but the emotional core remained. Imagine a living room in 1956. The tree is glowing with electric lights. A pile of gifts sits underneath, each wrapped in crisp paper with matching ribbons. A catalog lies open on the coffee table, pages worn from eager fingers. The radio plays soft holiday music, and the scent of freshly baked cookies drifts from the kitchen. The scene is new, modern, orchestrated, but the warmth inside the room is timeless. That is, the paradox of 1,950 seconds Christmas. It became bigger, brighter, and more elaborate than ever before. Yet at its heart, it still held the same desire for connection and joy. The decorations, gifts, and advertisements expanded the ritual, but they did not erase its purpose. Families continued to seek comfort in togetherness, even if the holiday now came wrapped in shiny packaging. In the decades that followed, this consumer-driven model only grew stronger. But its foundation, its first moment of clarity, lives in the 1,950 seconds. When Christmas shifted from a modest celebration into a full-season spectacle, crafted by retailers, embraced by families, and eventually exported around the world. As we move to the next idea, keep this gentle thought with you. What people chose to paint on it, warmth, community, generosity, tradition, remained in their hands. If you close your eyes for a moment and picture Santa Claus, chances are the image that appears in your mind feels familiar, comforting, and almost universal. A cheerful figure, dressed in bright red, with a snowy beard, warm smile, and a twinkle in his eye. He carries a large sack filled with gifts, and wherever he appears, he brings with him a sense of holiday magic. But what might surprise you is that this version of Santa, the one we think of as timeless, is actually a carefully crafted creation from the mid-20th century, shaped heavily by advertisers, corporations, and the growing world of American media. Tonight, in this quiet moment, let us drift into the story of how Santa changed from a folklore character into one of the most recognizable commercial figures on the planet. In earlier centuries, Santa existed in many forms across different cultures. He was not always called Santa, and he did not always wear red. Some traditions described him as a wise old man wrapped in earthy tones, more monk-like than magical. Others pictured him as a tall figure, dressed in dark winter clothes. In some places, he was gentle and generous, while in others, he carried a more serious air, reminding children to behave. Nothing about him was standardized. There were many Santas, many stories, many appearances, each shaped by local culture, heritage, and imagination. But the 1,950 seconds changed that forever. This was the decade when corporations realized something powerful. Santa was not just a folklore figure. He was a blank canvas, one that could carry countless messages and shape countless emotions. At a time when America was entering a new age of advertising, television, and mass consumption, Santa became the perfect symbol. He embodied warmth, generosity, excitement, and joy, all emotions that made people feel ready to give, to celebrate. One of the strongest forces behind this transformation was corporate branding. Companies across the country began to use Santa in their advertisements, but none did it more successfully than the beverage giant that helped solidify Santa's modern image. Their illustrations portrayed Santa as friendly, approachable, and delightfully merry. He wore red, a color that felt bold, festive, and easy to recognize. His cheeks were rosy, his beard fluffy and immaculate, his form rounded and comforting rather than stern or mysterious. This version of Santa appeared everywhere: print ads, posters, store displays, product packaging. Over time, the public embraced him completely. He became the new standard. This shift did more than just change the way Santa looked. It changed the way people interacted with him. Suddenly, Santa was not just a magical visitor who came quietly at night. He was present in malls, grocery stores, parades, commercials, and every imaginable kind of advertisement. He smiled from billboards. He waved from store windows. He encouraged families to try new products, buy new appliances, fill their carts with holiday treats, and bring home gifts that would brighten the season. In many ways, Santa became a character that lived in two worlds at once. In one world, he remained the beloved figure who visited homes on Christmas Eve, slipping in silently to share kindness. In the other world, he became a polished, charming spokesperson who helped guide customers through aisles of merchandise. And families accepted both versions naturally, almost seamlessly, because Santa brought with him such warm feelings. The growth of department stores added another layer to the transformation. Before the 1,950 seconds, children rarely met Santa face to face. But now, nearly every major store hosted its own Santa, complete with a velvet chair, decorated backdrop, and a long line of excited families waiting for a photo or a moment of conversation. These store Santas were not simply entertainers. They were ambassadors of the new Christmas problem, experience. For children, meeting Santa was magical. For parents, it was often a ritual. And for retailers, it was a remarkably effective way to draw crowds, increase foot traffic, and introduce shoppers to new products. The result? A perfect blend of emotion and strategy. The tradition grew quickly, cementing itself as an essential part of the season. Television amplified Santa's reach even further. Holiday specials, commercials, and jingles spread his image across the country. He appeared in animated shorts, live-action performances, and advertisements that played during family programs. He became a character who lived inside people's homes, speaking directly to them through screens. And because the television format made characters feel personal and familiar, Santa's connection with viewers grew even stronger. But Santa's influence did not stop at the borders of the United States. This bright, cheerful, modern Santa began appearing abroad, not through folklore, but through imported products, movies, and commercial advertising campaigns. Countries with their own winter traditions found this Americanized Santa arriving in store windows, magazines, and eventually on television. At first, he was simply a novelty, but over time, he began to merge with local customs, slowly becoming part of global holiday celebrations. In places where winter never brought snow, Santa still appeared on posters surrounded by glittering white landscapes. In places where red was not traditionally a holiday color, his suit still made its way into displays. And in places where holiday traditions were rooted deeply in different religious or cultural practices, Santa still managed to find a place at the edges, greeting shoppers and offering a cheerful smile. What made this possible was not just advertising power, it was the emotional resonance of Santa's character. The idea of a joyful figure bringing gifts, kindness, and a sense of wonder appealed to people everywhere. And because companies packaged Santa with universal emotions rather than specific cultural stories, he became remarkably easy to adopt and adapt. Yet despite this widespread embrace, it is important to remember that the transformation of Santa was not purely commercial. Families still held their own traditions close. Parents still told bedtime stories about Santa entering homes through chimneys, leaving gifts for children who had been thoughtful and kind. Children still wrote letters filled with hope, imagination, and pure belief. Even as Santa became a powerful commercial symbol, he remained a deeply personal one as well. That dual nature, part beloved tradition, part commercial phenomenon, is what makes Santa of the 1,950 seconds so fascinating. He did not replace older customs. He simply layered himself over them, blending myth with marketing in a way that felt surprisingly natural for many families. He became the bridge between old and new, between folklore and television, between imagination and advertisements. If you imagine a scene from the late 1,950 seconds, it might look something like this. A family walking through a bustling department store, holiday music softly playing, lights glowing in the aisles. A child tugs eagerly at a parent's hand, pointing toward a red-suited Santa seated on a grand chair, waving warmly. Parents capture the moment in a photograph, a keepsake that will live in photo albums for decades. Later that night, as the family returns home, that same child sits by the Christmas tree, listening to a story about Santa's magical journey across the sky. The commercial Santa and the mythical Santa coexist seamlessly in the child's imagination. That blend is what allowed Santa's modern identity to spread so quickly. He was both real and magical, both familiar and universal. He was a marketing symbol with a human heart, or at least that is how he was perceived. And today, even though the world has changed dramatically since the 1,950 seconds, Santa remains almost exactly the same. His red suit, his smile, his jolly personality all remain intact, carried forward from that pivotal decade. He still appears in malls, in commercials, in movies, and in countless decorations. He is, in many ways, one of the most successful cultural figures ever crafted, crossing borders, languages, and generations with ease. Yet beneath the bright colors and cheerful songs, the essence of Santa remains tied to the same gentle idea, the joy of giving. And perhaps that is why his modern form has endured so long. Even if his appearance was shaped by advertisers, the emotions he represents, kindness, generosity, delight, continue to resonate. So as we drift into the next idea, let this thought accompany you. Santa became a symbol of commerce, yes, but he also became a symbol of hope. And in a world recovering from hardship, families welcomed any figure that brought warmth back into their homes, even one who arrived through the bright glow of a department store window. If you have ever seen a shimmering silver Christmas tree in an old photograph and wondered why it looks strangely futuristic, almost like it belongs in a retro sci-fi film, you have just brushed against one of the most fascinating chapters of mid-century holiday history. Tonight, as we continue settling into this soft narrative about the evolution of Christmas, let us drift into the world of the 1,000 950 seconds atomic age, where technology, optimism, and imagination reshaped even the simplest holiday traditions. So take a moment, let your shoulders relax, and let this gentle story carry you into the era when Christmas trees did not just twinkle, they gleamed like metal stars. To understand why aluminum trees and modern decor became so iconic in the 1950 seconds, we need to feel the atmosphere of that decade. America had entered a period of extraordinary technological excitement. After the war, industries that once manufactured aircraft parts and advanced materials began exploring new uses for metal, plastics, and synthetic fibers. People were fascinated by the idea of the future rockets, satellites, atomic science, and a world filled with sleek, modern design. Homes reflected this optimism through clean lines, bright colors, and materials that felt fresh and contemporary. Holiday decor, surprisingly, became one of the clearest reflections of this futuristic spirit. Traditional evergreen trees, with their natural scent and organic shape, had been loved for generations. But in the 1950 seconds, something new appeared in American living rooms: the aluminum Christmas tree. These trees were unlike anything that came before them. Their branches were metallic, symmetrical, and covered in thin, reflective strips that sparkled under even the smallest light. When families first saw them, the reaction was a mix of curiosity, delight, and a sense that the future had somehow arrived in their homes. The aluminum tree did not require water, did not drop needles on the carpet, and did not lose its shape. In many ways, it felt like the perfect symbol of modern living, clean, efficient, eye-catching, and fashionable. But it was not only the tree itself that fascinated people. Part of the wonder came from the color wheel that often accompanied it, a rotating disc of colored light, red, green, blue, and amber, that cast shifting hues across the metallic branches. As the wheel turned, the tree seemed to change personality. One moment it glowed warmly, the next moment it shimmered like moonlight, and the next it sparkled with brilliant icy blue. For many children of the era, it felt magical, as though the tree were alive and breathing with light. This experience was entirely new. In previous generations, Christmas decor was warm, handmade, and grounded in nature. But the aluminum tree introduced a sense of spectacle, a gentle theatricality that made the living room feel like a stage. Families gathered around, not just to sit by the tree, but to watch it. The rotating lights, the metallic shimmer, the gentle reflections on the walls, all of it created a calm and mesmerizing ambiance. It was art, decoration, and modern technology working together to create a new kind of holiday atmosphere. But aluminum trees were only one part of the broader shift in decor. Homes were also filled with ornaments made from bright plastics, glass bulbs with metallic paint, and bubble lights that glowed as tiny bubbles floated inside their tubes. These bubble lights, in particular, were beloved by children with company. They looked like miniature lanterns, glowing from the inside as tiny currents of warmth created soft, gentle movement. Watching them was soothing, almost hypnotic, and it added to the feeling that Christmas had become a small universe of glowing color and gentle motion. Tinsel grew more popular as well. Earlier, tinsel had been made from lead, something people did not understand the risks of at the time, which gave it a striking silver sheen. By the 1950 seconds, safer alternatives began to appear, offering the same dazzling effect. Families would drape tinsel strand by strand, or sometimes toss it playfully, allowing it to catch the light from every direction. When paired with aluminum trees, Tinsel transformed the living room into a shimmering forest of light. Even outdoor decorations took on a futuristic twist. Plastic snowmen, wireframe reindeer wrapped in glowing bulbs, and geometric light patterns began appearing across suburban lawns. The clean, organized lines of post-war housing developments made these displays feel coordinated, almost choreographed. Streets glistened at night as patterns of light reflected off windows, fences, and rooftops. The result was a kind of suburban symphony, repeating shapes, matching colors, and glowing ornaments that turned entire neighborhoods into gentle rivers of light. What made this shift so meaningful was not simply the appearance of new materials. It was the sense of optimism that accompanied them. The 1,950 seconds were filled with dreams of possibility. People believed in a bright future shaped by innovation, science, and imagination. When families placed aluminum trees in their homes or decorated with bubble lights, they were not rejecting tradition. They were embracing the future they believed was coming. In magazines and catalogs, these new decorations were presented as symbols of progress. Families were encouraged to adopt modern design, to showcase their sense of style, and to let their homes reflect the spirit of the new age. Advertisements showed images of sleek living rooms with metallic trees and coordinated ornaments, suggesting that modern decor was not just fashionable, it was a way of participating in the cultural momentum of the decade. And people embraced it enthusiastically. Aluminum trees were not just decorations. They were conversation pieces. Visitors would admire their shine, comment on their symmetry, and marvel at how different they felt from traditional trees. Children loved the shimmering colors. Parents appreciated the convenience. Neighbors were inspired and sometimes playfully competitive. The decor was not simply about celebration. It became a form of expression. Imagine stepping into a 1,957 living room, the aluminum tree gleaming softly in the corner, slow waves of blue and red drifting across the branches. A record player hums gently with holiday music. A warm lamp sits on a mid-century wooden table. The room feels calm, but also distinctly modern, as though the future has arrived early, dressed in soft lights and metallic glimmer. For many families, this decor created a sense of wonder that felt different from the Christmases of previous generations. It was not rustic or handmade, it was polished, glowing, symmetrical, and beautifully unfamiliar. Children who grew up during this era remember the way the lights danced on the walls, the soft hum of the color wheel, and the feeling that Christmas was not only magical, it was stylish. Of course, not everyone embraced the shift completely. Some families held on to traditional trees, handmade ornaments, and rustic decor that reflected their heritage. Others combined both styles, placing familiar decorations alongside new ones. But the broader cultural trend was unmistakable. Christmas was becoming an aesthetic experience shaped by modern materials and futuristic imagination. As time passed, these decorations eventually faded from mainstream popularity. Aluminum trees became nostalgic relics, bubble lights became collectibles, and the atomic age aesthetic quietly stepped aside for new trends. But the impact of that era remains significant. It revealed how deeply decor can influence the mood of a holiday. It showed how technology and creativity can blend to create new forms of beauty. And it demonstrated that even long-standing traditions can evolve gently without losing their heart. Today, when we look back on aluminum trees and modern mid-century decor, they feel like windows into a hopeful past, a time when families believed the world was heading toward an exciting future, and even Christmas reflected that confidence. The decorations may have changed, but the spirit that inspired them, the blending of tradition and innovation, still influences the way we celebrate. So, as we continue our quiet journey through the evolution of Christmas, carry this thought with you. Every decoration tells a story. Sometimes it is the story of where we came from. Sometimes it is the story of where we hope to go. And in the 1950 seconds, for a short and shining moment, Christmas told a story of a future filled with light. Imagine a world where shopping is not a frantic sprint through crowded aisles, but a quiet ritual performed in the comfort of your own living room. A world where Christmas arrives not through a shopping mall, but through the familiar creak of the mailbox. Tonight, as we drift deeper into the soft, nostalgic glow of 1950 seconds America, let us settle into the gentle magic of mail-order catalogs, the glossy paper portals that reshaped how families prepared for the holidays. Picture this. It is early December, in 1954. You are curled up on the living room carpet, the Sears wish book spread open in front of you like a treasure map. The pages are smooth under your fingertips, filled with drawings and photographs so colorful they seem to pulse with possibility. Around you, the house is quiet, except for the soft hum of the heater and Bing Crosby floating in from the kitchen radio. This is the calmest part of Christmas, the dreaming. Before the rise of the modern mall, before credit cards, before last-minute rushes through fluorescent aisles, mail-order catalogs were the beating heart of holiday shopping. Every family had their favorites. Sears, Montgomery Ward, JCPenney, Spiegel. They arrived in thick bundles, glossy and optimistic, promising that happiness could be chosen, circled, and ordered by mail. And in an era before the constant noise of modern advertising, these catalogs felt like gifts themselves, little worlds of promise landing on the doorstep with a satisfying thump. The ritual began with browsing. Families did not flip through these catalogs casually. They studied them, discussed them, and sometimes negotiated over them. Children sprawled on the rug with red crayons, circling toys with the intensity of young strategists. Parents sat at the dining table under warm yellow light, reading item descriptions aloud, as if reciting poetry. 7-piece aluminum cookware set, automatic pop-up toaster, deluxe Lionel train with smoke-puffing engine. There was a rhythm to it. The turning of pages, the murmured comments, the dreams forming quietly in the margins. There was something comforting about the slowness of it all. No rush, no urgency, just anticipation. Each order was a small leap of faith. You filled out forms by hand, double-checked product numbers, and sealed your choices inside an envelope with a money order or a neatly folded set of bills. Then you walked out to the mailbox, sometimes in the snow, sometimes before sunrise, and pushed your envelope in with a sense of ceremony. After that, all you could do was wait. And oh, the waiting. It became part of the holiday magic. Children watched the mailman like hawks, racing to the door whenever a delivery truck slowed on the street. Parents tracked dates on the calendar, telling themselves the package would come any day now. The anticipation made every knock on the door, every thud on the porch, every rustling bundle of brown-wrapped parcels feel electric. The mailman of the 1950 seconds became an unofficial Christmas figure in his own right, part messenger, part miracle worker. He trudged through snow with packages tucked under both arms, his uniform dusted in frost, his breath rising in little clouds. Neighbors waved at him from driveways, children followed him down sidewalks, and adults slipped him holiday cards as thanks for being the quiet deliverer of their seasonal hopes. Some even joked that he worked harder than Santa. By mid-December, homes transformed into miniature storage facilities, closets filled with boxes. Bedroom floors disappeared, under piles of tissue paper and twine. The gift drawer became a sacred place where secrets were kept hidden beneath sweaters and spare sheets. Parents developed advanced stealth strategies, tapping boxes to identify fragile items, hiding receipts in kitchen jars, and unboxing gifts late at night to make sure everything worked before wrapping. Of course, not everything arrived exactly as expected. Sometimes, a sweater ordered in forest green arrived in a shade closer to swamp moss. Sometimes a toy advertised as life-sized turned out to be perfectly sized for a family of squirrels. But in the gentle logic of the 1,950 seconds, these imperfections were folded into the fun. A slightly lopsided doll became unique. A wobbling train track was blamed on holiday excitement. A robe arriving 2 sizes too small was promptly gifted to an unsuspecting relative with a confident, "I knew this would be perfect for you." Catalog shopping became a shared language, something neighbors talked about at the mailbox, something kids compared on the school bus, something families built traditions around. And because everything took time, people appreciated the gifts more. The slowness of the process made every arrival feel intentional, meaningful, and earned. When a package finally landed on the doorstep, wrapped in plain brown paper and bound with firm twine, it carried not just an item, but weeks of anticipation and imagination. The catalogs themselves were works of art. The toys section alone felt like a portal into childhood dreams. Dollhouses with tiny mid-century furniture, chemistry kits with too many mysterious vials, rocket-shaped ride-on toys, wind-up robots marching fearlessly across the page. For adults, the catalog whispered promises of convenience. Make meals in half the time. Add sparkle to your holiday table. Impress your guests with this stunning modern appliance. Even the clothes, crisp shirts, shimmering dresses, winter coats lined with soft fur, were presented with a sense of elegance that made ordinary life feel glamorous. The best part, families experienced it all together. Unlike modern online shopping, which tends to be solitary and rushed, catalog shopping created shared moments. Kids leaned over their parents' shoulders, pointing. Parents whispered about budgets, choices, and surprises. Everyone felt included. Everyone had a voice. Even disagreements, whether the red bike was more practical than the blue one, became part of the seasonal memory. As Christmas approached, the house filled with the growing scent of pine, the soft hum of radio carols, and the rustle of packages arriving like clockwork. And despite the modest technology of the era, the process felt astonishingly modern. Families trusted the system. They believed in the predictability of the mail, the reliability of companies they would known for years, and the promise printed in every catalog, satisfaction guaranteed. In many ways, catalogs democratized Christmas. Families who lived far from big cities, families without access to fancy shops, families with modest budgets, all of them could order the same gifts, the same appliances, the same toys as households in bustling urban centers. Catalogs erased distance. They shrunk the world. And they made it possible for even remote rural homes to feel connected to the broader cultural excitement of the holiday season. By the end of December, after the gifts were opened and the wrapping paper settled like snowdrifts on the carpet, the catalogs took on a different role. They became scrapbooks for the season, pages dog-eared, items circled, memories pressed into the margins. Parents tossed them carefully onto shelves just in case, while children saved them as wish lists for next year. Looking back, mail-order catalogs were not just tools for shopping. They were emotional anchors, little symbols of hope, possibility, and mid-century optimism. They represented a time when holidays unfolded slowly, patiently, tenderly. A time when the act of choosing a gift mattered as much as the gift itself. a time when flipping a page felt like discovering a new universe. And even now, decades later, those old catalogs remain treasured artifacts. People collect them, display them, and revisit them like time capsules. Because tucked inside every catalog is something that never expires. The quiet promise that joy can travel across great distances, wrapped in paper, delivered by hand, and unboxed with wonder. There is a gentle irony in how something as heartwarming as gift-giving can slowly transform into something that carries weight, expectation, and a surprising amount of quiet anxiety. Tonight, for our next soft and steady step back into 1,950 Seconds America, we are settling into a moment of truth about the holidays, a moment where generosity, good intentions, and social pressure all blended into one complicated seasonal dance. So relax, let your breathing slow a little, and picture yourself in a quiet mid-century living room. Soft lamps glow in the corners. The Christmas tree hums gently with lights, and outside the windows, the snow has begun falling in wide, peaceful flakes. This is where the story begins, with an idealistic vision of abundance, comfort, and connection. But beneath that calm surface, something else was stirring, a holiday expectation that was growing faster than anyone fully understood. In the decades before the 1,950 seconds, Christmas giving was simpler. Gifts were usually small, practical, or handmade. Things like mittens, books, a warm scarf, a wooden toy lovingly carved by hand. But when the post-war economic boom arrived, everything began to change. Factories that once produced wartime supplies transitioned into making consumer goods. Advertising soared. Department stores expanded. And suddenly, the idea of the perfect gift evolved into something much larger and more demanding. In the 1,950 seconds, families experienced a sense of stability and prosperity that felt new, almost unfamiliar. People had jobs, homes, cars, televisions, modern appliances, things their parents could only dream about. And with that sense of security came a subtle but powerful shift. Giving became not just an act of affection, but a reflection of your identity, your success, your taste, and sometimes even your social standing. By early December, conversations began to carry a soft undercurrent of comparison. The neighbor bought their daughter the newest talking doll. A coworker mentioned he found a special imported train set for his son. Your sister-in-law casually announced she purchased matching silk robes for the whole family. And even if no one openly competed, you could feel the unspoken message floating through the air. This year, the gifts matter. Families began making lists longer and more detailed. Children, influenced by catalog illustrations and early television commercials, circled dozens of items instead of one or two. Parents, wanting to give their children a holiday filled with joy, began stretching their budgets. Sometimes quietly, sometimes bravely. There was a sense that abundance equaled love, that a fuller tree meant a fuller heart. And yet, beneath the shimmering gift wrap and gold ribbons, many people felt something else. A quiet worry, a gentle pressure, a sense of responsibility not only to delight the people they cared about, but to avoid disappointing them. In a decade that emphasized appearances, tidy homes, polished manners, coordinated outfits, even gift-giving became part of the performance. A simple pair of socks no longer felt like enough. A modest toy seemed almost humble. Even practical gifts were becoming more elaborate. A kitchen towel became a six-piece, matching set. A single toy became an entire playset. A tie became a gift box containing cufflinks, a tie, and a matching money clip. Expectations grew, not because anyone demanded more, but because everyone was quietly trying to meet the new standard. Parents in the 1950 seconds often talked about the strange emotional math of the holidays, how giving something too small felt like not trying hard enough, and giving something too extravagant felt like overstepping. Walking into a department store only made the calculation more complicated. The displays sparkled. The music swelled. Salespeople described each product as essential or memorable or the perfect gift. Choosing began to feel like a moral test. And for many families, the joy of generosity mixed with the tension of limited budgets. You can imagine a mother in a wool coat, standing in the toy aisle, comparing prices with a tiny frown, or a father studying a shelf of perfumes, trying to guess which one his wife would love and which one would not quietly disappoint her. Families walked through stores clutching lists like life rafts, trying to stretch dollars without stretching themselves thin. Even the wrapping became part of the expectation. Gifts now needed to look special, feel special, and create excitement before they were even opened. Wrapping paper gleamed in metallic finishes. Ribbons curled in perfect spirals. Catalogs printed glossy photos of perfectly trimmed packages stacked around perfect trees. Housewives' magazines ran articles with titles like "Make Your Gifts Shine" or "Holiday Magic in 5 Easy Steps." And suddenly, even the outside of the gift carried its own quiet pressure. But here's the gentle truth that softened everything. Despite the stress, people genuinely wanted to give generously. They wanted to see their children's eyes light up. They wanted their partners to feel appreciated. They wanted relatives, neighbors, and teachers to know they were cared for. In a time of cultural rebuilding, the act of giving became a way of expressing gratitude for peace, prosperity, and the warmth of family life. It was emotional as much as it was material. Families felt closer when exchanging gifts. Children felt cherished. Adults felt proud. Even modest homes glowed with a sense of richness during the holidays, not because of the items themselves, but because the act of giving created small moments of connection, hands passing packages, voices soft with excitement, hearts full of tenderness. Still, it was not always easy. There were disappointments, the gift that did not arrive on time, the sweater in the wrong size, the toy that broke too quickly. But the memory of a thoughtful gesture lingered longer than any frustration. And even the smallest gift, wrapped with care, carried a meaning far beyond its price. Looking back, the 1950 seconds helped reshape Christmas into the celebration we recognize today. The expectation of giving more, wrapping more, preparing more, it all came from this decade where optimism met consumer culture. Some people might see it as excess, but beneath the surface was something gentler, a deep desire to build joy after years of hardship. Gift-giving became not just about objects, but about storytelling. A father giving his daughter a new doll was not just giving plastic and fabric, he was giving her a future memory. A mother giving her husband a new watch was not just giving metal and gears, she was giving him time, care, appreciation. A child giving a handmade card or a painted ornament was not just offering a small token, they were giving love in its purest form. Even now, decades later, the traditions we follow, the lists, the wrapping, the excitement under the tree, still carry echoes of those mid-century homes filled with hope. And if you look closely, you can see that same blend of joy and gentle pressure still shaping our holidays today. We still want our gifts to say something meaningful. We still want to surprise the people we love. We still want the experience to feel magical. But maybe the most comforting lesson from this era is this: the pressure was never the real story. The real story was the love behind the effort, the quiet late-night wrapping, the thoughtful choices, the laughter on Christmas morning, the feeling, however fleeting, that you managed to give someone a moment of delight. In the soft glow of a 1,950 seconds living room, with an aluminum tree shimmering in the corner and presents arranged in neat, hopeful piles, the gift-giving tradition blossomed into something beautiful, not perfect, not effortless, but heartfelt. And that, in the end, is the kind of gift that never fades. If you have ever seen a child's eyes widen at the sight of a shiny new toy, or watched them bounce with excitement as they point at something they desperately hope will appear under the tree, then you know just how powerful imagination can be. But in the 1,950 seconds, something extraordinary happened. Children's imaginations did not just blossom, they were carefully nurtured, encouraged, and guided by a new force that no generation before them had ever experienced. Tonight, as we continue our gentle journey through the soft glow of mid-century Christmas, let us settle into the warm, dreamy moment when toys became stars and childhood became a carefully orchestrated season of wonder. To fully understand this shift, imagine a living room in 1952. A family has just brought home their very first television, a bulky wooden box with a glowing screen that feels more magical than anything in the house. The room darkens, the screen flickers, and suddenly, images appear that move and talk and sing. Children sit cross-legged on the carpet, mesmerized. Parents whisper about the marvels of technology. And from that moment onward, Christmas is never the same again. Before television arrived, children learned about toys, mostly through store windows, catalog drawings, or word of mouth. The experience was local, intimate, and small in scale. But television changed everything. Suddenly, toys were not just objects. They were animated personalities dancing across the screen. Robots marched. Dolls blinked their eyes and spoke in cheerful voices. Trains puffed imaginary smoke. Toy soldiers saluted, and all of them called out to young viewers with irresistible charm. Advertisers realized quickly that children were not passive observers, they were enthusiasts, dreamers, and persuasive little negotiators. When a toy commercial aired during a popular children's program, it did not just promote a product, it planted a seed. Kids rushed to their parents, excitedly describing what they had seen, sometimes repeating the jingles word for word. The living room became a gateway into a world of possibilities. And Christmas quickly became the season when those possibilities were expected to come true. By the mid-1,950 seconds, toy companies had fine-tuned the formula. Instead of simple, quiet ads, commercials were filled with excitement and energy. Children in the ads played with gleaming race cars, posed proudly with new cowboy sets, or hugged talking dolls with radiant delight. Jingles were catchy, crafted to linger in young minds, like musical whispers. And the message was always clear. This is the toy you need. This is the one that will make your Christmas unforgettable. Children absorbed these messages with wide eyes and open hearts. Their wish lists grew longer. Their dreams grew bigger. And their expectations subtly shifted from a toy to the one advertised, the one everyone was talking about, the one that seemed to glow on the television screen like a beacon. Toy catalogs amplified the effect. While television awakened the imagination, catalogs organized it. Their glossy pages displayed toys with perfect lighting, perfect angles, and perfect smiles. A doll was not just a doll. It came with mini wardrobes, tiny accessories, and beautifully decorated playrooms. A robot was not just a robot. It was part of a futuristic universe of gadgets, gears, and brave mechanical heroes. For the first time, toys came with stories, personalities, and entire worlds built around them. And because the catalogs arrived weeks before Christmas, they set the pace of the season. Children flipped the pages slowly, absorbing every detail. They circled their favorites, drew stars beside must-have items, and sometimes attempted to convince their siblings to request matching sets. Catalogs became a kind of gentle competition, not between children, but between the dreams they carried. Parents, meanwhile, were swept into the excitement. They wanted to make the holiday magical. They wanted to give their children the joy they themselves might not have experienced during leaner childhoods. And with the booming economy of the 1,950 seconds, many now had the means to do so. But the new era of toy marketing also brought something unseen before: scarcity. Not artificial scarcity, not manufactured hype, but genuine, overwhelming demand. When a toy became popular, a robot that moved realistically, a doll that closed its eyes when laid down, a train with intricate tracks, stores sold out quickly. Parents lined up early, visited multiple shops, and sometimes even traded tips with neighbors about where to find the latest must-have item. And thus, the first true holiday toy frenzy was born. It was not chaotic in the modern sense. There were no viral videos, no stampedes, no frantic refreshes of online carts. Instead, the frenzy of the 1,950 seconds was quiet but intense, a soft race against time, conducted in warm coats, scarf-wrapped faces, and the soft glow of store windows. Parents spoke in hushed tones. Clerks apologized sincerely. And children, blissfully unaware of the effort behind their gifts, dreamed peacefully of Christmas morning. The toys themselves were wonders of their age. Many were battery-powered, which was still a novelty. Lights blinked. Motors hummed. A spaceship toy might spin, light up, and make soft whirring sounds that felt thrillingly futuristic. Dolls cried, laughed, or said a few simple phrases. And for families who had grown up during times of hardship, these toys felt almost miraculous little machines filled with personality and magic. Even simple toys held a new kind of charm. A wooden pull toy might have bright, modern paint. A puzzle might feature fresh, bold, mid-century artwork. A board game might come in a colorful box promising hours of fun. Everything was designed to be inviting, comforting, and memorable. At the heart of this new world was a simple truth. Children became active participants in the holiday season. Their voices mattered. Their wishes shaped family traditions. Their excitement became the emotional center of Christmas morning. But with greater choice came greater expectation. As children saw more toys, they wanted more toys. As toy technology improved, older toys felt less impressive. The holiday evolved from giving simple tokens to curating a small collection of delights. And while this brought joy, it also created a quiet pressure on parents, a pressure to meet the dreams that marketing helped shape. Still, it was not a cynical era. The joy was genuine. Families were united. Holiday mornings were filled with laughter, the crackle of wrapping paper, the clicking of toy gears, and the contented quiet of children absorbed in their new treasures. Parents watched with pride. Grandparents smiled softly. The house felt full, warm, alive. Looking back, the 1,950 seconds did not invent childhood wonder. Children have always found magic in simple things. But this decade did something new. It gave childhood wonder, a stage, a soundtrack, a catalog, and a glowing screen. It turned toys into symbols of hope, progress, and possibility. And it made Christmas morning not just a tradition, but an experience, one shaped by imagination, technology, and the irresistible charm of mid-century storytelling. Even today, if you close your eyes and listen carefully, you might hear faint echoes of those early jingles. You might picture a child staring up at a glowing TV screen, dreaming. You might see a parent slipping a toy into the back of a closet, hiding it with the soft satisfaction of knowing a magical moment is on the way. The holiday frenzy began there softly, sweetly, with toys that sparkled, advertisements that sang, and children who believed that the world was big, bright, and full of wonder. If you have ever taken a quiet evening walk in December and felt that soft, childlike thrill when you see a house shimmering with lights, the kind that makes the air feel warmer and the night seem gentler, then you already understand the heart of this next chapter. Tonight, we are gliding into a moment in history when holiday lights were not just decorations. They were invitations, conversations, expressions of pride, and sometimes tiny unspoken competitions between neighbors who were learning how to celebrate the new American dream. So settle in, breathe a little slower, and imagine a calm suburban street in the late 1950s. The houses sit side by side like siblings, each one modest, neatly built, and freshly painted. The lawns are trimmed, the driveways smooth, and the air carries that unmistakable crisp winter scent. Night falls early. Families have finished dinner. And then, one by one, front yards begin to glow. It usually started with one house. There was always that one family, the enthusiastic early decorators, who hung a string of lights along the roofline the moment the calendar flipped to December. The lights were simple at first: red, green, blue, yellow, large glass bulbs spaced evenly along a single wire. They hummed with warmth when you touched them. When the switch flipped, the house came alive. Kids from down the street would gasp. Parents would pause while taking out the trash and smile. And somewhere inside, another neighbor would quietly say, "Maybe we should put ours up too." And that was all it took. Soon another house joined in, then another. A wreath appeared on a door. Garland wrapped around a porch railing. A glowing plastic snowman took his place on a lawn. And without anyone planning it, the entire neighborhood slipped into a soft, cheerful glow. The beauty of suburban holiday lights in the 1950s was not just their brightness, it was the gentle sense of community they created. Each home, identical in architecture and layout, suddenly felt unique, expressive, and alive. Some families preferred symmetrical lights in classic colors. Others played with patterns. Some hung lights on every window. Others focused on a single tree in the yard that became a little landmark for everyone who walked or drove by. And beneath all this, a quiet, friendly competition began to grow. It was not about outdoing or beating anyone. It was more like a conversation carried in lights, each home replying softly to its neighbors. If one family added a glowing reindeer, another added a star. If one wrapped their mailbox in tinsel, another lined their walkway with small lanterns. Decorations spread like echoes, gently inspired by whatever was happening next door. Parents claimed it was for the kids, but everyone knew it was not just for the kids. The adults loved it too. They loved stepping outside in the cold, watching their own lights flicker to life, and then slowly turning to admire how the rest of the street shimmered like a shared winter stage. Children, of course, made the most of it. They created their own evening rituals, walking from house to house, pointing at favorite displays, assigning unofficial awards like sparkliest porch, best snowman, or prettiest tree. They huddled together at the end of the street to admire the overall glow, their breath rising in little clouds of excitement. Even pets, neighborhood dogs trotting along the sidewalk on evening walks, seemed to slow down and admire the lights, noses twitching at the scent of pine, snow, and warm indoor dinners drifting from window cracks. The displays grew more creative each year. Hardware stores began selling new types of lights, blinking ones, star-shaped ones, even miniature bulbs that sparkled like tiny stars scattered across the roof. Electric lawn ornaments appeared, caroling figures, glowing angels, cheerful Santas waving silently into the night. Wire reindeer stood proudly beside hedges, their silhouettes glowing like quiet guardians of the season. Some families experimented with color themes, all red lights, all white lights, or alternating stripes that created a candy cane effect across the roof. Others kept it simple, a single wreath with a perfect red bow, illuminated softly by one warm spotlight. And in that simplicity, there was elegance. Because the magic was not in the extravagance, it was in the participation. The feeling that everyone was creating something together, something bigger than any single home. One of the most charming parts of this unspoken competition was how it gently strengthened neighborly bonds. People stepped outside more often. They waved across driveways. They complimented each other's displays. A father climbing a ladder to hang lights would hear a neighbor call out, "Looking good this year." A mother adjusting the ribbon on a wreath might find herself chatting with someone passing by. Children darted between yards, comparing notes, sharing stories, and discovering new decorations. The lights became a kind of winter social glue, a way of saying, "We are in this season together." And the beauty of it all. The competition was never mean-spirited or tense. It was playful, light-hearted, encouraging rather than intimidating. Everyone celebrated each other's creativity. The goal was not perfection, it was participation. There is something subtly beautiful about that. In a decade that valued conformity, matching houses, matching lawns, matching lives, holiday lights created a way for families to express themselves without stepping outside the boundaries of suburban harmony. A house could be entirely ordinary by day, but extraordinary at night, glowing with personality. Inside these homes, the lights also brought comfort. From the living room window, families could see the reflections of the outdoor decorations shimmering on the glass. Children fell asleep with soft, colorful glows filtering through curtains. Couples talked quietly on sofas beneath the gentle rhythm of blinking bulbs. Even empty rooms felt warmer, wrapped in a soft halo of light. And for many families, these displays carried a deeper emotional meaning. After the difficulties of earlier decades, the glowing lights symbolized hope, progress, stability, and joy. They were small, gentle declarations that life had become brighter, literally and emotionally. By the end of the 1,950 seconds, entire neighborhoods began coordinating informal traditions, choosing the night they would light up, organizing caroling strolls, or hosting small gatherings where neighbors walked together to admire each home. Some communities eventually formalized these traditions into holiday festivals, but the earliest ones were simple, heartfelt, and quietly magical. Imagine standing at the end of a cul-de-sac at dusk. One by one, lights click on. The houses illuminate like a slow wave. The air fills with soft colors. Laughter drifts from open doorways. Somewhere in the distance, a radio plays a warm holiday tune, and for a moment, the entire neighborhood feels like a single living organism breathing in sync, glowing with shared joy. Even now, decades later, this tradition still echoes through modern suburbs. But its heart, the gentle competition, the quiet togetherness, the playful creativity was born in that optimistic decade when families learned that the simplest strings of lights could become stories, celebrations, and conversations all at once. The 1950 did not just invent holiday decor as we know it. They turned it into a communal ritual, one made not of rivalry, but of shared light. There is a special kind of stillness that settles over a home when the radio is playing softly in the background or when the living room glows with the warm flicker of a television screen. It is a stillness that invites people to sit closer, breathe slower, and become passengers in a story someone else is telling. Tonight, as we drift gently into our next chapter, we are stepping into the cozy world of 1950 seconds holiday media, a world where jingles, television specials, glossy magazine pages, and heartfelt films did not just entertain families. They shaped the very way people imagined Christmas. So let yourself sink into that feeling for a moment. Picture yourself in a quiet 1950 living room. The furniture is simple, clean-lined, and warmly lit. A radio hums in the corner, or perhaps a small black-and-white television flickers softly. Outside, snow drifts lazily across the driveway. Inside, you hear voices singing, stories unfolding, and laughter echoing from programs shared by nearly every household in America. This is where the modern holiday aesthetic truly began to spread, not from stores alone, but from screens and speakers that brought Christmas into the heart of every home. Before the 1950 seconds, holiday media certainly existed, but it was scattered. Radios played seasonal songs, local newspapers printed winter illustrations, and theaters sometimes released holiday films. But it was not cohesive. It was not uniform. And it did not reach everyone evenly. But once television became a household presence, even if the screen was small, even if the picture was grainy, suddenly Christmas gained a new kind of power. It became broadcast. The earliest holiday programs were simple, often low-budget productions, filmed in modest studios with minimal sets. But they carried something precious: warmth. A host stood beside a decorated tree, smiling into the camera as though speaking directly to the family watching at home. A choir of children sang familiar songs. A small orchestra played cheerful melodies. And somewhere between those soft moving images was the message that this glowing, cozy, beautifully arranged holiday scene was what Christmas looked like now. Because television created something revolutionary, a shared visual standard. Families in California saw the same holiday sets, the same glowing trees, the same polished ornaments as families in New York or Ohio or Texas. The aesthetic, once regional, once personal, became national. People did not just celebrate Christmas. They watched Christmas. They studied it, absorbed it, dreamed of it, and then, gently, they copied it. Magazines amplified this effect in a quieter, more elegant way. The December issues of mid-century magazines were essentially Christmas catalogs disguised as lifestyle inspiration. Their covers featured perfectly arranged living rooms with flawlessly decorated trees, symmetrical wreaths, glowing fireplaces, and families dressed in coordinated outfits. Every detail was curated, intentional, and bathed in soft, inviting lighting. Magazines taught families how to decorate, how to bake, how to host, how to wrap gifts, how to set a table, and even how to pose for holiday photos. They offered instructions, but more importantly, they offered dreams. A mother flipping through a magazine might pause at an image of a meticulously decorated tree and think, maybe my living room could look like that this year. A father glancing at a page featuring a glowing outdoor display might feel a spark of inspiration. Children saw pictures of smiling families opening gifts and wondered if theirs would look similar. These images were not just suggestions, they were blueprints. And in a decade that valued order, beauty, and optimism, people embraced them wholeheartedly. Radio, meanwhile, worked its magic in a different way. While it did not provide visuals, it created atmosphere, the emotional foundation upon which the new Christmas aesthetic rested. Soft holiday music, warm-voiced radio hosts, seasonal stories, and cheerful jingles filled homes from morning to night. The sound of Christmas became as recognizable as its decorations. Bing Crosby singing gently, choirs rising in harmony, vintage jingles advertising household goods. All of this created a sonic landscape that wrapped itself around families like a blanket. It did not matter that the tree was not perfectly decorated, or that the gifts were not extravagant. Once the radio played those familiar melodies, the home felt ready for Christmas. Holiday films also played a major role. While many of the most iconic Christmas movies came decades later, the 1950 seconds introduced a wave of gentle, sentimental films that reinforced the same ideas television was spreading. The warm glow of family togetherness, the enchanted beauty of snow-covered streets, the sparkling lights of downtown displays, and the belief that Christmas was both visually and emotionally magical. In theaters across the country, audiences watched stories that mirrored their own aspirations, stories of simple pleasures, decorated homes, and heartfelt connections. And as more Americans gained access to television, holiday specials became annual rituals. Families planned evenings around them. Children sat on the floor with blankets. Parents made cocoa. Grandparents leaned forward in their chairs. When the holiday special began, it felt like a moment of unity, not just for the family watching, but for millions of households experiencing the same scenes, the same songs, the same carefully crafted holiday aesthetic at the exact same time. It was the closest thing the decade had to a collective celebration. One of the most remarkable effects of holiday media was its ability to erase distance. Before the 1950 seconds, Christmas in rural towns looked different from Christmas in big cities. Snowy mountain communities decorated differently from warm coastal towns. But when holiday media arrived, it spread the same aesthetic to every corner of the country, even places where snow never fell. Suddenly, families living in sunny climates found themselves dreaming of white Christmases, pine trees, and fireplaces. They decorated with artificial snow, paper icicles, and frost-covered ornaments, not because the weather demanded it, but because the media-inspired image of Christmas felt irresistibly beautiful. This unification of imagery did more than simply standardize holiday decor. It created a shared cultural language. People from different regions, ages, and backgrounds could talk about Christmas the same way because they saw the same symbols, the same colors, the same scenes. A tree glowing with colored bulbs, a fireplace lined with stockings, a front porch wrapped with garland, a star shimmering atop a pine. These visuals became part of the national identity of the holiday. Yet despite all this standardization, holiday media did not eliminate individuality. It amplified it. Families used the inspiration they saw on screens and pages as starting points, then added their own touches. A magazine might inspire a theme, but the homemade ornaments added personality. A television special might influence the lighting style, but the old family nativity scene stayed on the mantle. It was a blending modernity and tradition, coexisting gently, side by side. Looking back, the role of media in shaping Christmas was not cynical. It was not purely commercial. It was emotional. In a decade filled with optimism, hope, and the belief that the future was bright, holiday media offered images of harmony that people wanted to believe in. And in many ways, these images became self-fulfilling. Families created the warmth they saw on screen. They embraced the aesthetic because it reflected how they wanted their homes to feel safe, joyful, beautiful, and full of light. Even now, if you hear an old holiday song from the 1950 seconds, or catch a glimpse of a vintage holiday broadcast, something stirs inside you. A soft nostalgia, a pull toward simplicity, a reminder that even the most modern celebrations have roots in those glowing screens and humming radios. The new American Christmas was not born in stores alone. It was broadcast into existence. There is something almost poetic about how traditions travel. They drift gently, the way snowflakes float across a quiet night sky. They land softly, reshaping themselves as they settle into new places. And, in the 1950 seconds, as America stepped confidently into its new era of prosperity, something unexpected began to happen. The country's freshly polished version of Christmas, the glowing trees, the cheerful Santa, the glossy catalogs, the jingles floating through radio static began slipping beyond its borders, carried by movies, advertisements, military families, and the expanding reach of American media. Tonight, let us drift softly into that global journey. Imagine standing in an airport in 1956, the soft hum of conversation surrounding you. American families are boarding international flights or ships, carrying suitcases packed with gifts, clothing, and sometimes a few holiday decorations tucked carefully between sweaters. They travel for work, military service, or new opportunities abroad. And without realizing it, they also carry something invisible, the new American Christmas aesthetic. At the same time, American products begin appearing in department stores overseas. Television programs, exported on film reels, play in foreign theaters or early broadcast stations. Magazines printed in the United States find their way into kiosks in cities, oceans, away. And slowly, the visuals and traditions that once belonged only to American suburbs begin to appear in places where Christmas had long been celebrated in very different ways. In Japan, for example, the post-war years brought a fascination with Western holidays. Christmas was not traditionally celebrated there as a religious event, but it soon evolved into a cultural one, bright, romantic, cheerful. American holiday images poured in. Santa in his red suit, glowing trees in department store windows, holiday cakes, festive lights, gift exchanges. Tokyo embraced these images with enthusiasm, turning downtown districts into sparkling winter wonderlands that felt straight out of an American magazine. Even though the traditions reshaped themselves to fit Japanese culture, the aesthetic foundation, the lights, the colors, the wide smiling Santa came from American influence. Across Europe, something similar unfolded. Though Europe had ancient winter traditions of its own, St. Nicholas, Christkind, Father Christmas, Yule markets, the mid-century American version of Christmas began blending with local customs. The bright red Santa replaced older, more solemn winter figures in some places. Electric lights appeared on city streets, bringing a modern glow that felt strikingly American. Hollywood films, filled with snowy suburban homes and shimmering living rooms, created a new visual ideal that Europeans found charming, modern, and strangely comforting. And in countries like Australia and New Zealand, where December meant sunshine instead of snow, American Christmas imagery introduced a sweet oddity. Families celebrated the holiday under the warm summer sky, yet decorated their homes with artificial snow, pine wreaths, and winter scenes copied from American cards. Children who had never seen snow still drew snowmen on paper. Store shelves filled with imported ornaments that sparkled the same way they did in U.S. suburbs. The dream did not need to match the weather. It simply needed to feel magical. Latin America experienced its own unique transformation. Many nations already celebrated Christmas with deep cultural warmth parades, religious rituals, family feasts. But the American aesthetic added a new layer: Santa in red velvet, gift-wrapping traditions, and brightly lit Christmas trees in public squares. Department stores in Mexico City, Buenos Aires, and Sao Paulo began filling their windows with American-style displays. Imported holiday songs played in shops, and slowly, a hybrid Christmas was born, part traditional, part modern, part American, part beautifully local. Even parts of the Middle East and South Asia, where Christmas was not widely celebrated, began adopting tiny hints of the American holiday. Some hotels put up trees. Stores used Santa imagery in winter promotions. Wealthier families began exchanging gifts inspired by Western customs. The holiday was not widespread, but its aesthetic influence drifted softly into cosmopolitan spaces. But the most fascinating part of this global spread was how quickly Santa himself became a universal figure. His bright red suit, his friendly face, his jolly demeanor, these qualities transcended language and culture. He did not need translation. He did not belong to one nation anymore. By the late 1952, Santa had become a global citizen, appearing in advertisements from Singapore to Sweden, from Brazil to the Philippines. His travels, once fictional, were now mirrored in real-world imagery. Of course, America did not intentionally export Christmas. There was no grand plan, no coordinated effort. The spread happened naturally, softly, almost accidentally, carried by culture, commerce, and the emotional appeal of the holiday. The reason it spread so easily was simple. The American version of Christmas was visually bright, emotionally warm, and deeply tied to the idea of family joy. It felt modern, comforting, and cinematic. Hollywood played a massive role in this. American films traveled the world, bringing with them familiar scenes: children racing down stairs on Christmas morning, suburban streets lined with glowing lights, fireplaces flickering gently beneath stockings, snow falling in perfect white sheets. These images were not just entertainment, they became templates for what the holiday could look like. Magazines and advertisements traveled too. They showed smiling families, drinking cocoa, women decorating trees with sparkling ornaments, men hanging lights along roofs, children writing letters to Santa. These images were aspirational, but they were also easy to copy. A family in Germany or Chile might not have the exact same ornaments, but they could recreate the feeling. A store in Seoul or Milan might not carry the same products, but they could replicate the atmosphere. And so, piece by piece, the American Christmas aesthetic spread across continents, not replacing local traditions, but layering itself on top of them, blending gently until a new global version emerged. What made the American Christmas so exportable was that it was not tied to deep ritual. It was tied to emotion. Anyone could appreciate the beauty of lights, Anyone could enjoy gift-giving. Anyone could smile at Santa. Anyone could feel warmth at the sight of a glowing tree. It did not demand belief, only participation. But even as it spread, it adapted. In different countries, Santa gained new names. Trees were decorated with local materials. Holiday meals incorporated local flavors. Decorations reflected cultural artistry. The holiday grew not just outward, but inward, shaped by the people who adopted it. The global Christmas that emerged was not purely American. It was an evolving mosaic of influences. Still, the heartbeat of the modern aesthetic, the bright lights, the cheerful Santa, the polished decor can be traced back to those glowing screens, glossy magazines, and bustling American suburbs of the 1,950 seconds. And today, whether you are standing in a snowy European village, walking through a Japanese shopping street, or spending December in tropical Southeast Asia, you will almost certainly find echoes of that mid-century American vision, subtle, familiar, and comforting. A wreath glowing softly, a Santa waving from a storefront, a tree wrapped in shimmering lights. They are reminders that traditions travel not through force, but through shared joy. The American Christmas did not conquer the world. It simply wandered softly, and the world welcomed it in. There is a moment, often late at night in December, when the house grows quiet and the lights from the tree cast gentle shadows across the living room. In that stillness, even the happiest people sometimes feel a twinge of something, bittersweet, a question, a sigh, a little ache beneath the surface of the season. Tonight, as we move into the next chapter of this soft and steady journey, we are stepping into the side of 1,950 seconds Christmas that people rarely talked about out loud. The gentle worries, the quiet comparisons, the subtle sense that something intimate and familiar was slowly slipping through their fingers. So let us sink into that quiet for a moment. Take a breath. Imagine yourself in a glowing mid-century living room. The house looks perfect from the outside, decorated, polished, festive. But inside, sitting on the sofa with a cup of cooling cocoa, a parent stares at the tree with a soft, tired smile, wondering if they have done enough, if this Christmas will be good enough, if the magic they are trying so hard to create is still the same magic they knew as a child. This quiet worry began taking shape in the 1,950 seconds, even as the holiday grew bigger, brighter, and more glamorous. For many families, Christmas had once been simple, a handful of homemade touches, a few thoughtful gifts, a meal shared with loved ones. But as the decade progressed, expectations grew. Decorations became more elaborate. Gifts became more numerous. Celebrations grew larger, more public, more polished. And somewhere along the way, a gentle shift occurred. Christmas stopped being something people prepared for together and started becoming something people performed. It did not happen all at once. It began with little things, a comment from a neighbor about how impressive another family's decorations looked, a magazine article showcasing a perfectly arranged table setting, a catalog model smiling effortlessly in a living room that seemed cleaner, brighter, and far more coordinated than anything the average home could maintain. The more people saw these polished holiday images, the more they felt compelled to match them, even if they did not realize it. Parents began feeling the pressure first. They wanted their homes to look warm and inviting for holiday guests. But now, warm and inviting seemed to require matching ornaments, coordinated wrapping paper, and carefully arranged decor. They wanted to give their children magical memories, but now magical seemed to involve expensive toys, stockings overfilled with surprises, and a tree that looked ready for a magazine cover. Even the idea of a successful Christmas morning had shifted. It was not just about the laughter of children or the smell of cinnamon in the kitchen. It was about the number of gifts, the excitement level, the sense of abundance, all things amplified by advertising and media. And of course, the comparisons grew quietly but steadily. A mother walking into a neighbor's home might glance at their perfectly decorated mantel and feel a soft pang of inadequacy. A father visiting a coworker's holiday party might notice the pile of gleaming gifts beneath the tree and wonder whether his own offering seemed small by comparison. Even children, sweet, enthusiastic, innocent, would talk excitedly on the school bus about what they hoped to receive, and some parents silently took notes, feeling the pressure grow. The most delicate part of this shift was that people rarely admitted how they felt. The holiday was supposed to be joyous. To say that Christmas was stressful or overwhelming felt almost wrong. And so the worries stayed quiet, tucked beneath wrapping paper and hidden behind practiced smiles. Some families missed the simplicity they grew up with, the homemade decorations, the anticipation that did not depend on catalogs or commercials. The feeling that Christmas was more about togetherness than presentation. The older generation often reminisced about these things, though gently, never in a way that criticized the new traditions. Still, there was a wistful note in their voices when they said things like, "It used to be simpler," or "We did not have much, but we had each other." And beneath that nostalgia was a truth. The faster Christmas grew, the easier it was to feel outpaced by it. Some families found themselves stretching their budgets, quietly sacrificing in January to pay for December. Others felt insecure about their lack of decorating skills or their inability to replicate the scenes they saw in magazines. And some simply felt that the holiday, for all its excitement, was beginning to lose something gentle. That spark of handmade warmth, that slower rhythm, that sense of being enough without being spectacular. This was not resentment. It was not bitterness. It was tenderness, a longing for balance. For many, the holiday still brought joy, wonder, and closeness. But now, it also brought a shadow of expectation they had not known before. Yet even in this rising pressure, people adapted with grace. They found ways to blend the old and the new. A family might have a modern aluminum tree in the living room and a small handmade nativity on the side table. They might buy new ornaments, but still hang the old ones that carried memories. They might feel overwhelmed by the rush of shopping, but still pause to bake cookies together on a quiet evening. In many homes, December became a dance, one step toward the new, one step back toward the familiar. Parents became experts in making magic out of modest means. A slightly dented toy was polished carefully before being wrapped. A simple gift was made meaningful through a heartfelt note. A less-than-perfect tree was transformed with love and imagination. Christmas did not need to match the images in magazines to feel beautiful. It needed heart. And even as pressure grew, so did awareness. Deep down, families knew that the true warmth of Christmas was not in the lights or the gifts, but in the pauses, the quiet moments shared at the dinner table, the late-night conversations beside the tree, the laughter echoing through the hall after a long day. Those were the things no advertisement could sell. By the end of the decade, the conversation around Christmas shifted subtly. People began acknowledging softly, gently, that the holiday had become complicated, that it was bigger and brighter, yes, but also heavier. Mothers talked about being tired. Fathers talked about costs adding up. Grandparents talked about the old Christmas with nostalgic affection. But in the midst of all of that, something quietly beautiful remained. Families still gathered. Children still believed. Lights still glowed softly in frosty windows. Music still drifted through warm living rooms. People still found comfort in rituals, even if those rituals looked different from years before. The anxiety did not overshadow the joy, it simply coexisted with it, a reminder that even celebration can carry weight. And maybe that was the lesson of 1,950 seconds Christmas. The heart of the holiday lives, not in perfection, but in effort. Not in abundance, but in intention. Not in matching the standard, but in creating meaning where you are, with what you have, surrounded by the people who matter. Christmas had not lost itself. It was evolving, just like the families celebrating it. And sometimes, in the quiet of a late December night, that evolution felt tender, a little bittersweet, but ultimately human. There are moments in history that fade quietly into the past, leaving only faint footprints behind. And then there are moments that linger, shaping our traditions long after the world around them has changed. Tonight, as we come to the final chapter of this soft and steady journey, we are stepping into the warm glow of Christmas as we know it today, and tracing the gentle threads that tie it back to one unforgettable decade, the 1,950 seconds. So take a breath. Let the lights in your imagination dim until you can almost see the silhouette of a mid-century living room, the aluminum tree shimmering softly, the radio humming, the scent of cookies drifting through the hall. Even though decades have come and gone since then with new technologies, new decorations, and new ways of celebrating the spirit of modern Christmas, still carries the soft fingerprints of that hopeful, transformative era. When people today think of Christmas, they picture scenes that would feel instantly familiar to a family living in 1957. A tree glowing with electric lights, stockings hung in a row, carefully wrapped gifts sitting patiently beneath branches, children writing letters to Santa, neighborhoods glowing in color, holiday specials playing on TV, and catalog-inspired gifts waiting behind closet doors. These images may feel timeless, but they were not truly cemented until that decade when tradition met modern life in a blend so seamless that it became the foundation of everything that followed. The decorations we use, now LED lights, plastic ornaments, glittering wreaths, are direct descendants of 1,950 seconds innovations. The concept of a coordinated tree, with matching color themes and curated decor, began when magazines first introduced the idea of a stylish Christmas. The shift from handmade to store-bought ornaments happened then too, not because people stopped valuing handcrafted items, but because new materials offered new stories to tell. Even the act of decorating the outside of a home, a string of lights along the roofline, a glowing figure in the yard, is something the 1,950-second suburban neighborhoods turned into a communal ritual. That playful, friendly competition transformed holiday lighting into a form of shared joy that continues today. Drive through any suburban street in December, and you will still see echoes of those first pioneering displays. Houses that shine like quiet beacons, inviting strangers and neighbors alike to join in the light. Inside the home, the legacy is just as strong. The mid-century living room, cozy, decorated, filled with music, became the template for what a proper Christmas living room should look like. Before the 1,950 seconds, trees varied widely in style. After the 1,950 seconds, almost every home in America, and soon the world, embraced the idea of a decorated indoor pine as the centerpiece of the season. Gift-giving, too, bears the unmistakable imprint of the decade. The idea of a stack of gifts rather than a single, modest offering, the wrapping paper, the ribbons, the matching tags, the anticipation that children feel as they stare at the growing pile. All of it grew from the economic boom and rising consumer culture of the time. Even the tradition of making a list became mainstream because catalogs and early toy ads encouraged kids to choose from large, exciting selections. And then there is Santa, the global figure who smiles from posters, mugs, gift tags, store entrances, and holiday films. The Santa Claus we know today, rosy cheeks, red suit, jolly energy, is nearly identical to the version that corporate illustrators perfected in the mid-century. That portrayal traveled the world, settling into countless cultures, becoming the universal face of Christmas cheer. If you stand back for a moment and look at all these elements together, the tree, the lights, the gifts, the Santa imagery, the wrapping, the advertising, the music, what emerges is something profound. The 1,950 seconds did not just participate in Christmas. It curated it. It organized it. It gave the holiday a visual identity so strong, so cohesive, that it became the default version for generations to come. Even the way we feel about Christmas carries echoes of that era. The warmth we associate with holiday gatherings, the ideal of a cozy home filled with laughter and clinking plates, was reinforced by 1,950 seconds, media that showed families harmoniously celebrating together. The nostalgia we feel when hearing certain songs comes from radio broadcasts that made holiday music an essential soundtrack of December. The dreamlike feeling of walking into a store decorated with garlands and lights can be traced to the first major retail displays designed in that decade. It is almost as though the 1,950 seconds bottled the emotional essence of Christmas and shared it with the world. But the legacy is not only aesthetic or cultural, it is emotional, too. For many people, the desire to create a perfect Christmas, the soft pressure we have explored, comes from this era as well. The 1,950 seconds introduced the idea that Christmas was not just a holiday. It was an experience to be crafted, curated, and presented. Modern parents still feel a version of that weight. They still stay up late wrapping gifts, decorating rooms, and baking treats, hoping to create a memory their children will hold on to forever. They still compare themselves, even quietly, to the polished images in media. They still balance joy with effort. Yet, the beauty of this legacy is that it is flexible. The 1,950 seconds may have introduced the structure, but families have reshaped it into something personal. Some prefer minimalist trees. Others go all out with decorations. Some keep traditions simple. Others embrace the spectacle. Christmas now is a blend of mid-century ideals and personal expressions, woven together in thousands of unique ways. And through all of this, the holiday remains powerful because it continues to offer what people sought even back then: warmth in the cold, light in the dark, connection in a busy world. If you look closely, every flickering light today is a tiny echo of those first bulbs strung across 1,950 seconds roofs. Every carefully wrapped gift is a whisper of those early catalog-inspired gestures. Every Santa in a mall or on a poster is a reflection of an image that solidified more than half a century ago. Every holiday special on TV owes its existence to those pioneering broadcasts that made Christmas a shared national experience. And perhaps the most touching part of this legacy is how the holiday continues to evolve, just as it did in the 1,950 seconds. Technology has changed. Families have changed. Traditions have changed. But the essence, the emotional core, remains steady. Christmas continues to be a blend of old memories and new hopes, a celebration that holds the past gently while reaching forward with open hands. In the end, the 1,950 seconds did not define Christmas forever. It simply gave it structure, color, light, and a heartbeat that the world found comforting. The holiday we know today, warm, glowing, hopeful, is a mosaic built across decades, with the mid-century years shining brightly as one of its most influential pieces. And as we close this final chapter, imagine a quiet street at night. The lights twinkle softly. A tree glows through a window. Someone is humming a familiar tune in the kitchen. And somewhere, maybe in a dusty box in an attic, an old aluminum ornament from 1958 still waits patiently, carrying with it the spirit of a Christmas the world never quite forgot. As we reach the end of this gentle journey through the glow of 1,950 seconds, Christmas, take a moment to let everything settle. The lights, the stories, the small details, and the quiet emotions woven through each chapter. What we have traveled through tonight was not just a timeline of decorations, or toys, or advertisements. It was the evolution of a feeling how one decade, filled with hope and change, managed to shape the warmth we still search for every December. We saw how the suburbs reinvented the holiday, how stores and catalogs built new traditions, how Santa stepped into the spotlight of modern culture, and how toys, lights, and media turned Christmas into a shared national ritual. We wandered gently through the joys and the pressures, the sparkle and the softness, the excitement and the nostalgia that still linger in the season. And we ended by recognizing something beautifully simple, the heart of Christmas. The longing for connection, light, and togetherness has never really changed. It has only found new ways to shine. So, wherever you are right now, sitting near a window, lying back in bed, or listening with your eyes half closed, I hope this story wrapped around you like a warm blanket. I hope it brought you a little peace, a little comfort, and a reminder that even the busiest seasons carry quiet corners where you can breathe. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for joining the journey, chapter by chapter, light by light. I hope your night is calm, your mind is gentle, and your heart feels a little warmer. Sleep well, rest deeply, and I will see you again in the next story. Good night, friends. Has disabled and tells humaniter is in pervident chance and has disabled con in stelsatter and 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 stelsatter